Yeah. Fly was flying on the team. Touchdown, touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a Bird Gang Nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling with Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, really time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.
What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast. So today we have a very special guest, man. We got my guy Brenden Deeg in the building. We're gonna talk some Eagles, some training camp. How's it going, Brenden?
Man, that intro just got me fired up. That's one of the better. Good work.
You got to do it, man. You got to do it. We've had a lot of different people on here, and every time they hear it, it's like, all right, I'm ready for football. Let's get it. Let's get it. Well, good thing today we got some football.
I'm ready to run through a wall for this podcast right now.
Let's go. That's what I want to hear. Well, who knows? We have a training camp going on today, so who knows? You might be called. We might need you out on that field. You never know what's going to happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about training camp, what happened, what's going to happen, talk a little bit about this Eagles season. I'm excited about it. First thing I want to ask you, man, is just how are you feeling going into this season about the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think they have a top probably 7 to 10 roster in the NFL, probably closer to the 7 side. So I think they're ready to compete. Like when they traded Carson Wentz in 2020 or to Indianapolis, I think fans and me myself, we all thought this might take a little longer to kind of get going. But I think Howie Roseman, hats off to him. I was one of his bigger critics when I'm assuming a lot of Eagles fans were, and I was kind of leading the charge when it all kind of fell apart. He's done a great job of kind of rebounding this team, and the roster's kind of set to win. It's going to come down to 2 things. I think the defense. I think the defense is going to be key. Look, this defense kind of underwhelmed last year. They finished 25th in DVOA. I think the roster was better than a 25th best defense in the NFL. So I'm looking forward to see what Jonathan Gannon can do with more talent on the roster. And then, of course, the elephant in the room here is Jalen Hurts. What's he going to be able to do with all the weapons around him? So I think this roster is set up to compete. Super Bowl contender might be a little over the top, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities, right? Like this NFC is wide open. The NFC is completely wide open. So I think the floor is high for this team. Like I don't see them winning less than maybe say 7-8 games. Like I don't see like a possibility of them like kind of falling apart. I think there's too much talent, but yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting season. Like there's a lot kind of at stake here for the quarterback. Of course, Jalen Hurts is kind of on a 1-year prove it kind of deal, and Jonathan Gannon as well on the defensive side of the ball. I think those 2 are the most interesting pieces to this team. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the season. This is exciting for Philly fans and the Philly faithful.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head talking about, how Howie Roseman was able to kind of turn this roster around. And we had some people that stepped up last year that I don't think any of us, I don't want to say any of us, but we weren't really expecting some of these guys to become the guys that they were. You saw Landon Dickerson. We knew he had the talent, but to see him stay out there, for the 17 games, be able to be the factor that he was huge. And then you look at, a Devontae Smith had a great rookie season, obviously historical when it comes down to the Eagles. You had a lot of key contributors that I don't think people were expecting them to be as good as they were. But what you brought up was the defense, and that is something that really scares me. Obviously, over this couple training camps, it's been back and forth. Jalen had his way kind of in the first practice, and it seems like the defense kind of caught up a little bit. I want to ask you about Jonathan Gannon because I feel like he is the biggest question mark right now. Obviously, a lot of people can say he didn't have the talent necessarily to run the scheme that he wanted, last year. This year, we add a bevy of talent. What are you looking for out of Jonathan Gannon? How can he save his skins with Philadelphia fans? How can he kind of please us, make us happy again about this defense in your eyes?
So it's interesting. I don't really like. I kind of push back on the idea that he couldn't run the scheme with the talent that he had last year. I thought there was some good talent on this roster. Like I don't really understand kind of that argument to it. I think the linebacker position you can make the argument. There wasn't a ton of talent there. They've obviously added talent with Kaiser White and Nakobe Dean this year. I think the big problem with Jonathan Gannon's system last year was the running game. The Eagles got attacked heavily on the defensive ends. They would go right at Derek Barnett in the run game. There wasn't kind of that big body presence that you need for this kind of style of defense. And it's no secret why they like Jordan Davis. Jonathan Gannon was probably pushing the bus to draft Jordan Davis because sticking him in the middle of the defense just makes it all easier for the players around him. He's able to take on 2 blockers, which opens up gaps for linebackers to hit the hole. And it's no secret why the LA Chargers and Baltimore Ravens, 2 other analytically driven teams, were very interested in him as well. Brandon Staley is the coach of the LA Chargers. Him and Jonathan Gannon were in the same wedding party. Like that's like they clearly share ideas on how football works, and I'm assuming that's why the Chargers also were very interested in Jordan Davis. You stick him in the middle of that kind of laid back 2-shell high defense, and you're able to do a lot more things. So I believe that's why they were very interested in Jordan Davis. So I can kind of maybe push back a little bit on the talent, why they weren't able to play the defense last year. But I do think there's something to it. But in general, I'm really the big question with Jonathan Gannon this year, and I'm really curious to see how this plays out. And I do think it's going to be a storyline all year is how they use Hassan Reddick. I'm very see how this happens, because if I'm running a defense in the NFL, I am setting Hassan Reddick at the quarterback 97% of the time. That's where he shined. That's where he got paid. He's got money and big contracts because he's gone after the quarterback, and he wasn't able to do that in his first couple years in the league. So that's the biggest question mark there. I'm not really high on Gannon. I want to see him prove it. I know he got some questions. I know he's got some head coaching interviews this offseason. I know there's a lot of people around the NFL that think he's smart, but I don't know. I want to see it. I wasn't very like I thought the defense last year was very boring, very kind of laid back. They didn't really do much. There wasn't a lot of kind of interesting stuff going on. Like the top quarterbacks like Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, they shredded this defense. Derek Carr shredded this defense, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of maybe a rejuvenation of Gannon's kind of impersonation around the league.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring that up about that. It was kind of almost safe, right? You can almost say it was a very safe defense, and I don't feel like there was a lot of change up. There wasn't a lot of just kind of getting ready for the next. Last defensive coordinator we had, obviously Jim Schwartz. We complained about some things that he did, but the one thing I will say about Jim Schwartz is that at halftime there were adjustments made most games, if not all games. I don't feel like I saw that with a Jonathan Gannon. Towards the end of the year, you saw a little bit better, of a defense. Obviously, being able to get rid of Eric Wilson kind of helped some of these young linebackers get some shine. But I bring up adjustments because it kind of brings me to my next point. You talk about Jordan Davis. The Philadelphia Eagles have 3, possibly 4, possibly 5, depending on how you look at Renell Wren, defensive tackles that could start on most teams. So how do you see this kind of shaking up with these defensive tackles? Do you think Jordan Davis is going to kind of be walked along? Do you think he's going to be thrown into the fire? How does that affect the guys around him? Just kind of give me your idea on how you think this defensive tackle room is going to be spread out.
I think Jordan Davis should be kind of, he should play right away. I don't see why you should hold him back unless there's conditioning issues, which doesn't look like there is. It looks like in camp he's kind of playing with the ones. He should be Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox should be kind of rotating and getting the same amount of snaps, and then you mix in a little Milton Williams there, right? I think the Eagles have always had the philosophy of keeping their defensive tackles fresh. Well, at least with Jim Schwartz they did. I don't know what Jonathan Gannon's kind of philosophy behind it is, but I'm assuming that sort of philosophy is just is integrated in the building with Howie Roseman and whatnot. So I'm assuming they're going to keep them fresh. I don't think you'll see like a legit number 1, number 2 starter. I'm assuming maybe Javon Hargrave will probably play the most snaps, but I think if what I would do is I would rotate them and keep them fresh, keep them healthy. Like Fletcher Cox is, he's going to need time to rest. He's getting up there in age. If you want the best of Fletcher Cox, you should be keeping him fresh and not playing him a ton. So that's what I would do. And I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. But but just on the Jordan Davis point, he's going to be playing right away. He's going to be a huge part of this defense. Jonathan Gannon, like I said, he's going to be key to the schemes that Jonathan Gannon wants to play.
Definitely. And I want to ask one more question about the defense and then kind of make a shift over to the offense a little bit. But defensively, we have veterans on this team that it looks, you talk about Fletcher Cox, you talk about Javon Hargrave, but it also goes to the secondary, right? We have a very good secondary right now as far as our cornerbacks go, but they're older and they're getting towards the end of their contracts with the Eagles. Darius Slay, I think we have one more year after this. Obviously, James Bradbury on a 1 year deal, Vontae Maddox, I think we have 2 more years. But what do you look at this cornerback room? Is there anybody, we have a Zach McPherson, you have a Goodrich, you have, so many players, Josh Jobe, so many players that came onto this roster this year and towards the end of last. Is there anybody on this roster, outside of the top 3 guys that you're looking at and saying, I want to see what this guy becomes? Maybe he could be like the future of our secondary. Is there any pieces that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
So it's funny. I went into this training camp looking to kind of find my my young cornerback darling on this roster to kind of answer that question for you. I don't have them yet. I think it's a little too early. I don't know enough about them, but that's one position. I said this on my podcast actually yesterday. That's the one position I'm really keeping my eye on over the next couple of weeks is to find the guy that can step up. Because look, I know this year they're set. I think James Bradbury and Darius Slay are a great cornerback 1-2 duo. But they got to start thinking about the future here. Darius Slay's turning 31. James Bradbury, I believe, is 29. He's only on a 1-year deal. I'm assuming Darius Slay's back for 1 more season just from his contract. If James Bradbury plays very well, I don't think they're going to pay him. Like, this is a 1-year rental, most likely. That's the most likely outcome. Could they pay him? Sure. But I just don't think that's Howie Roseman's MO to kind of have locked up 2 30-year-old cornerbacks. He wants to get some young he wants to infuse this roster with some young cornerback talent. And he's taken a lot of swings on younger guys with later draft pick compensation, like Tay Gowan, Mac McCain. Like, these guys are kind of later round draft picks. And I think it's a fine way to go about it. Just throw darts at the board, see if one hits, right? So they got Tay Gowan, Mac McCain. You said Mario Goodrich is there. Kerry Vincent Jr. I'm hearing from Eagles training camp that Mac McCain has played the best so far out of that group. But again, it's very early, so I don't have an answer for you there. I'm still waiting. If you ask me in a couple of weeks, maybe I got one for you. But they're gonna need. Well, not gonna need, but they're hoping that one of these guys steps up and maybe takes this opportunity. And I'm also assuming that they're gonna take a lot of cornerbacks on the roster. Like, I think they probably keep 6 or 7 because look, you spent this money and you spent later round picks on these guys. Might as well keep them and see if you can develop them and have them play behind Darius Slay and James Bradbury and make them learn and let them learn how to kind of be a good cornerback in the NFL. So it's gonna be interesting. That's one of the spotlights I got my eye on for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I had to ask because I've been asking everybody because I'm trying to look myself, right? So I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do at the future of that position. Like you said, it's something we got to figure out. We didn't want to pay Steve Nelson, so I doubt that we're going to want to pay James Bradbury. So I'm definitely keeping my eyes locked on that. But I will say, excuse me, that I love that there's so much competition, right? Last year, Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni and this whole staff realistically was talking about competition. Last year, we saw it to a certain extent, but I think that we kind of knew what was going on. But this year, there's questions at every single position. And I want to switch over to offense and to wide receiver in particular. Obviously, we know A.J. Brown's going to be on the field. We know Devontae Smith's going to be on the field. We're thinking Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal kind of fighting for that 3 and 4 spot. But again, there's guys like, a JJ Arcega. Oh, he's on at a tight end, but there's guys like JJ. There's guys like Jalen Reagor. There's guys like John Hightower, Kiaric Wheatfall. There's a lot of guys on this roster towards the end of that roster or that position group. How do you see that position group kind of shaking up? How of use do you think they'll really be? I mean, last year we were a number 1 running team. Do you think we're going to be able to get the touches to all these guys?
I think they should be playing a ton of 13 personnel, which I'm assuming they will. So you have Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and Quez Watkins on the field all at one time. They should be playing 13 personnel 75, 80% of the time. Like, those are 3 really talented guys, and have them on the field together. It will open up holes for each other. It will open up holes for the running game. That's what I would do. And I'm assuming that's what they're going to do as well. They really like Quez Watkins in that building. Of course, they traded for A.J. Brown to give him a lot of money, so he's going to be a huge part of this offense. They love Devonta Smith. Those 3 guys should be getting 80 to 85% of the playing time. And then you mix in Zach Pascal between that group, which I think is fine. But And to be honest, that's all they should really need. You only need those 4 guys. There's no need to kind of go dig deeper on this roster and look for more wide receiver talent. This is a really top-heavy wide receiver room. So I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. That's what they should do. But when it comes to the bottom of the roster, it's very interesting. I've debated this on my podcast as well throughout the last couple of weeks. I don't know if Jalen Reagor is going to be on this roster when they trim it down to 53. There's really no use for him, right? If you take a look at wide receivers that are 5th or 6th wide receivers on your roster, you need them to contribute in the special teams game. Jalen Reagor's not, as of right now, Jalen Reagor has not been involved in the kick returning and punt returning practices at training camp. So that's very interesting. So that means that they don't see him as a returner, which is important, which is a blow to his to his chance to make in the roster. And he's not going to be I don't believe he's going to be a gunner on punts unless he's practicing that. But if you're going to be a 5th wide receiver, you need to be active in special teams. You need to make yourself useful. And if I was the Eagles, I would only keep 5 wide receivers. I don't see a need to keep 6. If you're keeping 6, one of them is going to be inactive. I just, with such a top-heavy receiver room, I don't see the need to keep 6. Like, it's not like you're the Green Bay Packers where your wide receivers are kind of all over the place, or the Kansas City Chiefs where you don't really have a number 1. The Eagles have a solidified top 3. You don't need to keep more than 5. So I don't know what they do with them. So right now, he said if they would lose $2.4 million from the cap if they cut him, and they would eat $6 million in dead money. So that means they would lose a total of $8 million. I look at it like they only lose $2.4 million if they cut him, because yes, $6 million is dead money, but that dead money you're getting a roster spot from someone else, right? So there's 2 ways to look at it. Like, yes, they could lose $8 million, or they only lose $2.4 million because that's the cap savings they're going to lose. But that dead money is equal to another person they can put on the roster. So there's many ways to look at it. I don't think a team's going to trade an asset for him at this point. I think if they would have got a 7th round pick by now, they would have traded him. I don't think that the league sees Jalen Reagor very highly. The only possible trade solution I could see is your garbage for my garbage type of trade, like your disappointment for my disappointment. So kind of like, I don't know if you remember the Dennis Kelly for Dorial Green Beckham trade a few years ago, something like that. But yeah, I'm curious to see kind of what happens towards the bottom of the wide receiver room. But just to answer your question, I think it's a Quez Watkins, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith train. Like, those 3 guys are going to get a lot of playing time together, and they fit really, really well together. Like, you can make the argument this is a top 3, top 5 wide receiver trio in the NFL.
Yeah, and like you said, they fit great together because they all kind of do something a little bit different, right? You got AJ Brown that's going to probably knock a couple people out with a stiff arm. You got Devontae Smith, who's the all-around just route runner, great hands, and then Quez Watkins, who I think his hands are very underrated and his catch radius is very underrated. He's just got the speed, that you need. He's gonna stretch that field, and he's gonna be able to make people respect his speed, and that's something big, especially for what we're going to get to next, which is this running game, right? Like I said, last year we were the number 1 running team, and it was due to some historic stretches from the running game, right? You had some games that you were running over 200 yards. I think we did it 3 times in a row. We were going crazy as a running back group. No Jordan Howard yet. I say yet because, we have a toxic relationship with him, but no Jordan Howard yet. You still got Booby. You still got Kenneth Gainwell, who seems to be taking a lot of the snaps. You still have a Boston Scott. How do you see this room kind of shaping up? Do you think Miles Sanders is finally going to kind of get that workhorse type load? Do you think it's going to still be a committee type approach? How do you see that kind of working out?
So I am driving the train. I'm driving the bus of Kenny Gainwell. I love him. I think he's going to have a great year. I'm very excited to see what he can do. I was really high on him in last year's draft process. I thought he was one of the more exciting running backs. They got him in the 5th round. I was really pumped for this organization to get him. I love him. I think he's going to be, I don't know if a star is putting it a little too highly, but I think he's going to be a very, very, very good NFL running back. It's important to keep in mind with Kenneth Gainwell that he went to Memphis, and Memphis is very weird with how they use the running backs. They almost use them as wide receivers. Kenneth Gainwell only had 235 total carries at Memphis. He was still very raw as a runner when he got to the NFL. I think the sky's the limit for him over the next couple of years. Like, the more touches he gets, the more running attempts he gets, I think he's going to keep growing and growing. I don't know if this year will be his breakout year, but I think next year, he's only 23 years old. Like, next year he could pop. Like, the more running carries he gets in the NFL, he's going to be a very good player. I had this take on my podcast yesterday. I think he is going to be what everyone thinks Antonio Gibson was going to be. Like they both came from Memphis, very similar play styles. I think Kenneth Gainwell will be a better player than Antonio Gibson. But to your point about Miles Sanders, I don't know. I'm not very high on him going into this year. They're in a really funny situation with him. He is a free agent after this year, so this is his last year in his contract. I'm assuming Howie Roseman doesn't want to pay him running back money, and I'm assuming that if I was Miles Sanders' agent, I'm knocking on that door and I'm asking for top 15, top 10 running back money, right? Like that's what you do for your that's what you do for your players. You want to get them as much money as possible. Like, and I don't see the Eagles and Miles Sanders coming to an agreement to sign him long term. Miles Sanders has never had more than 900 rushing yards with the Eagles. He has been inconsistent. He's been banged up a little bit. Look, I think he's a very talented player. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to poo-poo Miles Sanders here, but I think it's one of those things where a rock meets a hard place, and he's going to be probably pushed out. I said before training camp, he was a really interesting guy to keep an eye on for a potential trade target because, again, he's not signed long term. If a running back goes down in training camp, let's say a contending team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or a team that has high hopes this year, their starting running back goes down, he's a perfect kind of plug and play for that because his free agent. Like the Eagles he's gonna be walking away for nothing at the end of the year, so might as well get something. But I'm really big on Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's going to be a surprise guy in this offense. He's explosive. Like if you go back and watch him from last year, he looks like he pops on the screen. That was kind of my big takeaway when I was rewatching Eagles games throughout the offseason. I'm like, whoa, like number 14 pops on the screen. Like he was probably the best offensive player not named Devonta Smith last year. Like he was that good. He can hit the hole hard when he gets the ball in his hands. He's explosive. 43% of his touches last year either went for a touchdown or a first down. Like when he had the ball in his hands, he was doing something with the ball. So that's how I kind of look at the running back room. And Boston Scott is also an interesting guy. The Eagles gave him, I believe, about $2 million guaranteed this year. So he's going to touch the ball. Like $2 million is not nothing in this league. If you get guaranteed money like that, you're going to be on the roster and doing stuff. So he's another guy. I think they're going to start off like probably around 40% Miles Sanders, 40% Kenneth Gainwell with a little 10% Boston Scott. And then I think as the year goes on, Kenneth Gainwell kind of takes the role as the number one back on this team.
Kenny G. I like Kenneth Gainwell a lot. And I think you said it perfectly. He had to kind of learn to, I don't even want to say learn to run, but he had to get better at being a running back. He had the hands, we knew that. And in pass protection, I think that he got better over the year. I think he came in pretty decent, but he got better over the year as pass protection went. And I feel like that's, those are the two biggest things, right? You have to make yourself useful, but pass protection is like one of the biggest things on the football field. Now I want to kind of talk about, we have to, right? We have to talk about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has ups and downs as any other quarterback, any other player in training camp. What are you looking for from Jalen Hurts going into this season? What are you looking for him out of this training camp? Just what do you have your eyes on when talking about Jalen Hurts?
So my Jalen Hurts take going into this year is not very exciting, and I know it's not the best take. It's not a hot take. I have no idea what to expect from him this year. Not a clue. I had a very hard time wrapping my head around his season last year. He showed a lot of flashes. Like the Denver Broncos game, the Kansas City Chiefs game from last year. He played really well in those games. He was throwing the ball nicely, stepping up in the pocket. And then you got games like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, which is what we all were left with last year, right? Like that was our last view of him, where he's not reading defenses. He's escaping the pocket early. His head gets down when he escapes the pocket. I had this take again on my pod. I think it's 50-50 chance he's a starting quarterback in 2023. Like, I think it's literally that close. I think it's completely up in the air. He had a whole offseason to work with and to work on things, and he's a very hard worker. That's the other thing, too, about Hurts is he's such a guy you want to root for. Like, he's got it all. Like, he's a nice dude. He looks like a good leader. He looks like he works hard. So that's another thing with him. He's got all the intangibles. He's got to learn to read defenses better. He's got to learn to kind of get his timing down better. And that stuff can happen. Like, that's stuff that you can teach a quarterback. If you get a quarterback in an NFL room, that's something that you can kind of learn with them and work with them. Now, playing devil's advocate on that, he went to Alabama as a 17, 18-year-old kid. This isn't a guy that went to Wyoming like Josh Allen, where he didn't have quarterback coaching. He went to Alabama and Oklahoma. He had some of the best quarterback coaches a young kid could ask for. So to say he's just going to figure it out once he gets to the NFL is a little bit misguided, because he had such good quarterback coaching in college. So again, like there's two sides to everything when it comes to Hurts. He's a very hard guy to read. What am I looking for? I'm looking for better timing, better reading defenses. Again, the timing thing is key here. He missed a lot of throws where he was about a second late on the toss. He needs to step up in the pocket more. He doesn't have that wicked Allen, Herbert, Mahomes arm strength where he can make a snap-second decision. He's got to be a half second earlier on his reads and a half second earlier on his throws. There were a few, when I was watching back Eagles games this year, there were a bunch of tosses to Devonta Smith down the sidelines where it was underthrown because he wasn't throwing it quick enough. So yeah, I want to see the passing game get better. But the other thing too with Hurts on the positive side is he is a legit runner. Like, he is the second best running quarterback in the NFL. And that's something that means something. Just because you're not the best passer, you can find other ways to move the ball. So yeah, I'm so up in the air. I don't really have a take either way. I'm not leaning either way. I'm going to give him 8 games and then I'll kind of go from there, because like it's very hard to kind of judge him off training camp. I know there's been a lot of reports about going up, and he's been up and down. Very, very hard player to judge in training camp, because when he's at his best, he's making plays off script. He's stepping up in the pocket and running for 30 yards downfield. That stuff doesn't happen in training camp, right? So he's a very hard player to get an opinion off of just in training camp practices. So I would just advise fans to maybe just take a deep breath and let a few games play out before you kind of freak out or have your opinion on him. That's what I'm going to do, and I think that's the right way to go about it.
Yeah, give him a chance. And then I think that's a good way of saying it. He has to get that anticipation. I think a lot of people sometimes tie his lack of anticipation or, timing, whatever you really want to call it, and they tie that to a noodle arm, right? He doesn't have the arm strength. I think he has the arm strength to make the NFL throws, but like you said, he doesn't have
he's got the arm. He doesn't
exactly.
He doesn't have a crazy arm. Like he's not Mahomes, Herbert, or like a Zach Wilson or anyone like that, but he's got a good, solid NFL arm. He can make every throw. He just needs to be quicker at it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about decision making. So, all right, now I want to tie a nice little bow on this before I get you out of here. Yep. I want to ask you, you look at this team, right? You look at what we're going into. What is a successful season for you? What, go back. We're in the off season. You look back at the season that just passed. How can you sit down and say that was a good season for my Philadelphia Eagles?
I think a successful season is winning a playoff game. Like that would be really, I think that would kind of bring up the hopes and the future. This team's really young, right? Like they're still building. They've got some older pieces, right? Darius Slade, James Bradbury, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave's a free agent after this year. So they have some question marks. Like it's not like they're fully set, but they've got a really good young core to be excited for. To be excited for over the next couple of years. Now, there's 2 ways to look at a successful season this year. Is Jalen Hurts is the future quarterback? Is one way you could look at it, right? Like, I don't know what I'm curious to know what they think a successful season is. Like what Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie believe a successful season is, right? It could be a lot different than what we think. I don't like if let's say they finish 10-7, they win a playoff game. Is Jalen Hurts back? Maybe not, right? Like they've got 2 first-round picks. They could fall in love with the guy. A guy could become available for trade, right? Like there's a lot of different variables for a successful season for this team. I believe if you win 10 games and win a playoff game, you got to be happy. You got to that's progress. You're going forward. And again, the NFC there's a lot of tough teams in the NFC. It's not top heavy, but you got a lot of feisty teams in this conference here where you can finish 10-7 and you could end up playing a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round. The Packers in the first round, right? Like they could run into a wall in the first round of the playoffs. So I think winning a playoff game and winning double-digit games is probably, in my opinion, a successful season. But again, what if they could do that and Jalen Hurts could still not be playing very well because the defense plays really well? You get some big plays maybe from A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Like there's a lot of different variables and different ways to look at a successful season for this franchise. And I'm wondering what Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie think a successful season is. Like, it's probably a lot different than what we think it is.
Yeah, most likely. And I think it's the game inside the game. I think, I'm hoping at least. I'm hoping, our scouts, our staff, our team are able to kind of look at the game within the game, kind of take away the points and all that, and just be able to evaluate each individual player on
Yeah.
the players, plays that they make, plays that they don't. So that's what you hope for. But I'm sure, a lot of things on the outside are going to have to do with it as well. But Brenden, please, before we do let you go, just let them know where they can find you, where they can find your podcast and everything.
Yep. So you can follow me at Brenden Deeg NFP on Twitter. Check out the Double Doink podcast. It's on YouTube if you want to subscribe there. I would greatly appreciate it. Apple, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcast. Some really cool guests have came over the last month. I had Adam Schefter on about a month ago. I've had Chris Mortensen. Jordan Schultz was on last month. I have some really cool player interviews coming up over the next few weeks I want to check out. I'm not going to spoil it here, but I've got a lot of cool players, former Eagles coming on over the next month. So make sure to check out my work. So my writing at the National Football Post is betting based. So I'm a big proponent of anytime touchdown bets. If you've been following me on Twitter, you've known that. So I'm really looking forward to some anytime touchdown picks coming up for the NFL season. So make sure to follow my work there as well.
Definitely. And again, man, I appreciate your time so much. This was a lot of fun. We're definitely gonna have to do this again, maybe during the season, get a little bit, pick your brain a little bit. I appreciate everybody that is tuned in. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. Like he said, go show that love, But other than that, man, y'all know what it is. It's Fly Eagles Fly, and we are out here. Peace.
Everywhere. This is for
Yeah.
you.
Fly Eagles flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling the Philly the podcast.